Hey guys, it's Lauren, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I do barely there highlights with the AirTouch method. And I wanted to do highlights like this because this is someone who can't see me very often. This is my sister, so she's out of state. So I wanted to make sure that I can give her a really pretty blonde that's going to enhance her natural, and then also something that's not going to grow out quite as harsh. And I am just so excited about the results, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. So the first thing I wanted to do was get away with not bleaching her ends, but I still wanted to brighten them up and kind of remove any old pigments in there and then also any hard water buildup. So I used this Malibu Blondes treatment, and it's the first time I've ever used it. I'll put a link to it in the description for you guys, and it actually worked really well. So it helped to brighten it up, kind of remove the unwanted tones, and it really just felt really conditioned afterwards too. So instead of doing like a bleach cap or something to kind of remove buildup and old color, I would definitely recommend using this because it leaves the hair feeling really nice. Alright, so for the AirTouch, I'm actually going to be using all the same formula, and I'm going to just remix it and use different consistencies of it. So I'm going to do Joico Blonde Life, and that gives you 9 levels of lift. I'm going to use 20 volume the entire time. And the reason is because I'm going to be doing a method that I don't do very often, so I know I'm going to be very slow at it, and I want to make sure that I'm not damaging the hair. So that's why I'm using the 20 volume. Then I'm also going to give myself a little bit of insurance and add olaplex, and I did 1/8 of that to my formula. So that does bump the developer down just a little bit, but trust me, these sections are so fine that it's going to be more than enough lift. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start in the hairline here, and I'm going to do a diagonal back section, and it's going to be, just make sure you take a section about as fine as like one of those pieces of paper that you find in the Bible. Like they're super thin and fragile, so that's how fine you want it to be. Okay, so next I'm going to grab my blow dryer, and I'm using a really powerful Italian blow dryer. It's amazing and it's pretty affordable too. I will link it in the description. And it is called the Gamma Plus 3500. So next I'm going to take a long embossed Framar foil, and I'm going to crease it at the top of my balayage board. And what I'm doing is using actually the wrong end of one of my Product Club boards because it's nice and straight, so I can get it really tight up to the scalp rather than the curved side. And again, all of the tools and products that I'm using are going to be linked down in the description for you guys. Super easy, so you can find it. Okay, so next I'm going to take my brush and just go ahead and apply the lightener. And I just do everything very cautiously, especially when I'm doing it, you know, it's something that's kind of like a newer technique to me. I have another AirTouch video where I kind of combine techniques, and I'll link that to the upper right of the video if you want to check that out as well. But this time I wanted to do everything super close to the scalp, so I'm just being very cautious, even though I know that it's going to give me an amazing blend. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to do the sections about 1/4 inch apart from each other. And then I want you to check out too, like every time I do a section, I actually skim the top before I start to use the blow dryer. And just for those of you who might not know, the blow dryer is on a cool setting. It's not heating up the hair. That's not the purpose of using the blow dryer. I got a lot of questions on this on my last video. But the purpose of using the blow dryer is actually to separate out the hair as you would if you were doing maybe like a really fine baby light. So that is what the blow dryer does. It just kind of pulls out those smaller hairs, and then you're left with a organically weaved out section that you will then paint. So when I first saw this technique, I was like, why go through all the trouble to use a blow dryer to separate the hair when I could just do a really fine baby light? I mean, isn't it the same thing? But then I tried it, and the results are just so much different, and it's hard to describe until you do it yourself. So I really encourage you to try it. It can be frustrating at first because it is such a new way of doing things. You kind of have to get a rhythm down, but it does give you a very different result. It just naturally blends so much better than just doing a really fine baby light. Okay, so now I'm jumping over to the other side of the hairline. And so if you're wondering how long I do the blow dryer for, I usually just do it, I kind of eyeball it, and it's not really like a set amount of time. It's more of I want to see a section that's really fine, that I can see through, that's really even. So if it's really fat on one side, it's really skinny on the other side, that's not what I want. I want to make sure that it's really even all the way through. And one of the problems that I was running into while I was doing this is that I kept blowing open the foils that I had just previously done with the blow dryer. So that's why I'm making sure to just kind of tuck those corners in a little bit and just anchor the foil, make it that much stronger. So now that I've tackled kind of the hairline area, I'm just going to go into a horizontal placement here for the rest of this section. And one thing that I noticed about this too is if you're working with somebody who has really fine hair and maybe has a lot of baby hairs, my sister just had a baby, so she has some really fine small baby hairs that are growing back. So those are the pieces that are kind of getting blown out, which is good because those are going to be the weakest pieces. So I know I'm coloring the strongest pieces, and that's one of the strengths of this method too. But sometimes it's hard to separate out and then put the board into, and they keep kind of wanting to come up onto the board, so that can be really challenging. So I just make sure that, see, if you watch right here, I'm putting it down, you see those little hairs at the top start coming through, so I just kind of like reach underneath and pull those down, and that's how I was able to combat that. Sometimes though, I just kind of let it go and save myself the time of doing that because I'm not necessarily trying to get as close as possible to the scalp when I'm working in this back area right here. So for the rest of the back partitions, I'm going to be doing horizontal sections all the way up. And I'm also going to be using, continue using my 20 volume. I am going to switch formulas later, but that's just to keep the formula new and fresh, because like if you use lightener too long, it kind of starts to lose its potency. So I could use the same developer as long as I am making sure to freshen it, maybe every like 30 minutes or so, just to make sure that I'm not losing the effectiveness of the lightener. I'm also going to make sure that it's a little bit thicker the next time I mix too, because that is going to help it process a little quicker as well. Alright, so now that I finished the back, I'm going to be moving on to the sides, and then of course ultimately the hairline and the face frame. And I have a whole method for how I do my face frame and my hairline, and it's really, really detailed out in the course that I have created for you guys. And if you wanted to check that out, that is in the link in the description. It's the Ultra Blended Color course. And I just put out a brand new course as well covering my Ultra Blended Color method, and it's just a lot more affordable, but it still covers the meat of what I do with this method and how I'm able to create like these really amazing blends on especially really dark hair, because it's so hard to do. So both of the courses are going to have really detailed demonstrations of my entire method start to finish. And of course, you know, this is the method that allowed me to start charging $100 an hour for doing hair, which just blew my mind. So you're going to have to check out those courses in the links below. So I'm going to continue doing horizontal sections from above the ear all the way up to the part line, and I made sure that I left this area small enough so that I could always fit it in a foil and I'm not left with like an awkward section of hair at the very end. And if you guys have any questions about what I'm doing, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to answer your guys' questions. I'm going to be giving you guys all of the formulas, so don't worry about that. Just keep watching and enjoy. So when I move into kind of the crown area, I'm actually going to do the sections a little bit closer together, because this is the part that's going to act like a veil that kind of falls over everything else. So another little tip when I'm doing the blow drying is I'm kind of starting in the mid shaft and then just almost like sweeping everything toward the top of the hair. So it's almost kind of how I do like teasy lights, like I'm just kind of like starting in the middle and then just kind of packing everything to the root. That's kind of a similar action that I'm going to be using with the blow dryer. So I'm just kind of packing down into the root to get everything nice and separate and clean. To make sure that you get as close as possible to the scalp, especially in this crown area, you're just going to want to kind of, when you skim that top section, over direct it or just hold it straight up from the head so that you could get the board as close as possible to the scalp. If you're holding it down, it's going to be really hard to get the board close enough. So just pay attention to what your arms are doing. Make sure you're holding that hair up nice and high so you can get that board in there nice and tight. Alright, so now I'm moving into the delicate hairline. So I switched up my foils into these colored Product Club foils. They're a little bit smaller, and the color just helps me show you guys the differentiation between the hairline and the rest of the hair. So for the hairline, I'm just kind of doing diagonal back sections, but I'm following the shape of the hairline. So everybody's hairline is different. So I'm just gonna make sure to follow the pattern that's already there. So it might change from one side to the other, but it's only because I'm following the hairline. And that's what's gonna give you just like the most organic look. And I'm also going to be using my smaller paddle board from Product Club, and they actually come 2 in a pack, so you get the longer one and the shorter one, and I just kind of use the longer one for the back and then the shorter one for doing around the hairline. So now I'm going to do the face frame, and what I'm doing is I'm putting these two really close together, so that way I have like a really pretty pop of brightness, but it's still going to be very blended because I'm using this AirTouch technique. And again, I go into so much detail about how I do the face frame because I believe it's one of the most important parts of, you know, when you're doing these blended balayage looks and foliage looks and things like that. So I go into a ton of detail about how to do the perfect face frame so it doesn't look super chunky, it's noticeable, but it blends really well. So that's all covered in my course, and you just kind of learn the theory behind how I do the facial frame and what clients are actually looking for in the facial frame. So you can check that out in my course in the link below. So just a recap of what I'm doing, I'm skimming the top of the hair. I'm making sure like that line is nice and straight. Everything is just going to require a lot more detail when you're doing this method because you're going very close to the scalp. You're trying to get a very distinct and fine, even section. So, and the blow dryer is not used to heat the hair, but it's used to separate the hair as you would with a baby light. And then I use the board to just give me more control. And I'm placing the sections about 1/4 inch apart from each other. And then in certain areas, I place the sections a little bit closer together just to give a little bit more of an impact in certain areas. All right, let's see how it looks, and it's lifted to a level 9-10, which is perfect. I could do anything with that. So I am going to wash her out, and then after that, we're gonna do some color melting to kind of blend everything. It's gonna be super easy, you guys. Unlike a lot of techniques, you know, you have to do a heavy root smudge, root shadow just to blend everything. That's not necessary with this technique, and that's one of the coolest things about it. So I'm just gonna, my main goal when I'm color melting is just to kind of blend everything into what she already has. So my formula that I'm going to be using is just 8GI and 8N in shades EQ. And I'm going to let that process for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then in the last 5 minutes I'm going to tone her ends with 8N, because again my goal is just to give her a really easy grow out and low maintenance blonde, and I just wanted to make sure that the tones of the fresh new blonde and the blonde that was already there just kind of mesh together and they don't look like two separate hair services. And I have to say the Malibu blondes was really nice to use because it took out like all of the old toning and all of the buildup that was in her hair so that I could make as even and clean canvas as possible. And for the last two sections of the hairline area, I just use a 9N and 8GI shades EQ equal parts. So that just gives it a little bit of a buffer from going too dark around the face frame, because of course I want that to be the brightest. And here's just a close-up of the end result. You can see those highlights are super baby fine. They just kind of break up the harshness of the dark root and they go right into the scalp and they just look so blended. And that's without me doing any type of root shadow, root shade. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to check out all of the links of all the tools and products that I use in the description below. And then also my courses on foliage and balayage in the links below. I've got lots of more free YouTube videos for you guys to check out as well. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified every time I release a new video. Thanks again for watching, you guys. I'm Lauren, and I'll see you soon with another video.